Introduction. In today's society, education is not merely the transmission of knowledge but also the shaping of culture and values. In this book, authors Peter Hegseth and David Goodwin exposed the deep-seated problems within the American education system and proposed solutions for its reconstruction. Peter Hegseth, a military veteran and media commentator, is known for his insightful thinking on education and cultural issues. David Goodwin is an education expert specializing in the study and practice of classical Christian education. Their collaboration stems from a shared concern about the current state of education and a strong sense of mission to cultivate the next generation. Society's assessment of the two authors is generally positive. Hegseth is widely recognized for his keen observations on social issues, while Goodwin is considered a thought leader in the field of education. Their perspectives have spurred public reflection on educational reform and have garnered significant attention from parents and educators alike. The backdrop of this book is the crisis facing the American education system, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, where the effectiveness and equity of education were severely challenged. The book has received enthusiastic responses, with many readers stating that the views presented have caused them to rethink the meaning and direction of education. In the book, Hegseth and Goodwin emphasize the concept of paideia, signifying that education is not merely the accumulation of knowledge but also the cultivation of character. They argue that the key to reconstructing education lies in returning to the principles of classical education to cultivate students' rationality and virtue. This philosophy holds significant implications for families and society today, encouraging parents to actively participate in their children's education and focus on their values and moral development. In short, this book is not only a profound reflection on the current state of education but also a beacon of hope for the future of education. It is hoped that readers will gain wisdom from it and re-examine the importance of education in the family and society. Introduction **. Body **. In the chapter titled Our COVID-19 Moment, author Pete Hegseth deeply analyzes the far-reaching influence of progressivism in the American education system. Through a retrospective of his personal experiences, he points out that many believe the fundamental structure of the American education system is a naturally evolved entity, but in reality, it is all a product of progressive education. We are all products of progressive education, and we don't know it. This perspective challenges conventional wisdom, revealing the ideology behind education. Hegseth argues that many fundamental elements within the education system, such as the school bell and the Pledge of Allegiance, are carefully designed, not accidentally formed. He mentions, these seemingly subtle and innocuous changes come from somewhere, and for a reason. This not only makes us aware of the vast gap between the appearance and substance of education, but also provokes profound reflection on the purpose of education. Meanwhile, although public anger towards CRT, critical race theory, is seen as a key factor in the shift in educational direction, Hegseth believes that the real problem lies in the fundamental change in early educational philosophy. As he puts it, the progressives will laugh last, because whether or not they're teaching CRT in public schools, the real damage was done over a century ago. This reveals that educational reform cannot merely remain superficial. If the fundamental ideological problems are not addressed, any reform will only treat the symptoms, not the disease. Hegseth's argument prompts us to reflect on the fact that education is not only the transmission of knowledge but also the shaping of thought. Therefore, he emphasizes the importance of rebuilding the education system to avoid the potential threats of thought control and totalitarianism. Through this chapter, readers not only understand the historical origins of the education system, but are also guided to consider the relationship between the educational content they have received and its true purpose, which is undoubtedly a matter worth pondering. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the American education system underwent unprecedented changes, particularly in race and gender education, with the awakening of parents sparking widespread concern. Many parents had the opportunity for the first time to delve into the school's teaching content and discovered that radical ideas such as white privilege and systemic racism had quietly entered the classroom. This phenomenon is known as the COVID-19 effect, marking the questioning and awakening of parents' awareness of educational content. As the original text states, parents are finally starting to question what's happening in their kids' classrooms, and it's not an isolated incident, it's pervasive. However, in this educational upheaval, many educators and administrators remained numb to this, even underestimating the strong reactions of parents. Shockingly, A North Korean defector even thought that our elite schools are crazier than North Korea, which is undoubtedly a warning about the current state of American education. Against this backdrop, many parents and educators failed to realize that the radical ideas lurking within the education system were deeper and more widespread than they imagined. A parent commented, "I thought I had a good understanding of how dire the situation was in American education. I was dead wrong." This shows that parents often do not realize that the changes in educational content are not accidental but the result of a general trend. Despite parents expressing anger and protest at school board meetings, the changes in educational content have not changed substantially. All this shows that the radicalization of American education is not an isolated phenomenon but a deep-seated social transformation. Ultimately, this transformation has not only affected the current education system but also has the potential for profound and far-reaching effects on the future direction of education. In the face of these challenges, the awakening and resistance of parents will become an important force in driving educational reform. In the American education system, especially at the K-12 level, the influence of ideology is, as the authors state, the real problem is high school, middle school, and now elementary school. Many parents tend to underestimate the profound impact this stage of education has on children's thoughts and values, believing that university education is the main battleground. In fact, as the authors point out, the battlefield for the hearts and minds of our kids is the 16,000 hours they spend inside American classrooms from kindergarten to 12th grade. During these long hours of study, the textbooks and curriculum content that children encounter are often outside the parents' field of vision, leading parents to be unaware of the hidden ideology. At the kindergarten and elementary school levels, the educational content children receive is already politicized. Many textbooks not only impart knowledge but also intentionally or unintentionally instill specific gender and racial ideas. The purpose of these textbooks is not merely education but is designed to divide students by race and gender. That is the goal, not just the result. This educational approach even contradicts reality biologically. The authors describe it as, "It's not informational, there is only one right answer, biology doesn't matter." In elementary school, it's sheer indoctrination for 16,000 hours. This extreme politicization of gender and race not only distorts children's understanding of their own and others' identities but also exposes them to greater cultural divisions in their future social lives. Therefore, parents should be more vigilant and pay attention to the educational content their children receive during the K-12 stage, because these ideas and concepts will profoundly affect their future. Education is no longer just the transmission of knowledge but also the shaping of ideology. Parents should be aware of this in order to better guide their children to grow in a complex ideological environment. In today's society, the phenomenon of cultural brainwashing has permeated every corner, affecting our understanding of traditional values. Although many bookstores are located in conservative communities, the authors point out that children's books are highly skewed toward progressivism, a phenomenon that clearly contradicts people's expectations of these areas. Even more shocking is that in these bookstores, books about Michelle Obama, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Kamala Harris are all front and center, clearly indicating that the influence of left-wing culture has quietly invaded spaces that should have traditionally held firm. Social media, once considered a symbol of personal expression and freedom, has become a breeding ground for luring young kids away from God, traditional values, and love of country with targeted enticements. In such an environment, young people face tremendous pressure and often unwittingly accept the ideas of left-wing radicalism. In addition, the authors raise a counterintuitive point. Traditional religious education and family values are no longer enough, clearly indicating that relying solely on church time is no longer sufficient to resist the influence of cultural brainwashing. As society evolves, parents need to be more alert and aware that in modern society, traditional education and values are facing unprecedented challenges. The authors call on parents to take more proactive measures to protect their children from the erosion of progressive culture, ensuring that they can maintain independent thinking and adherence to traditional values as they grow up. After all, is Americanism enough? Are free people, free markets, and a strong military enough? These questions concern not only personal growth but also the future of society. In discussing the relationship between religion, culture, and politics, the authors profoundly reveal the fundamental role of faith in shaping culture, stating that our current culture wasn't created in a vacuum, it's rooted in faith, belief in something. This perspective challenges common understanding. Many people believe that culture exists independently of religion, yet the authors emphasize that culture is actually an extension of religion, and religion is the root of culture. This theory allows us to re-examine the evolution of American culture, especially the influence of the Judeo-Christian tradition over the past few centuries. While many assume that the changes in the American education system are accidental, the authors believe this actually reflects a deeper cultural and faith crisis. As they say, the power of the church for a generation became the bedrock of its people's culture, followed by the philosophy of the schools and government. The empty seats in today's churches and the secularized classrooms cultivate an anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Christian culture, leading to a loss of faith in America. This situation is undoubtedly a subversion of traditional concepts. Many people have not realized that culture is more deeply influenced by religion, rather than simply a product of politics. Through Pastor Chris's insight, culture is downstream from religion. The authors call on people to re-examine the importance of faith in modern society, warning us of the cultural crisis we face and its potential consequences. In today's public education system, simple complaints and protests are often ineffective. The authors, through personal experiences and their mother's story, profoundly reveal this point. As he says, "My emails to the principal had about as much effect as telling people who don't like the tax code to email the IRS to complain. It might feel good, but it won't do anything." Many people mistakenly believe that complaining can bring about change, but in reality, this approach often only serves as self-comfort. Using the IRS as a metaphor, the author points out that the operation of the education system is deeply rooted, and the possibility of change is minimal. Therefore, parents often feel powerless and frustrated when facing educational policies. As the author's mother was the only parent to object and challenge it at a PTA meeting, her efforts failed to attract sufficient attention, and she could only helplessly accept the status quo. All this reflects the weakening of parents' roles in modern education. Although they should play an important role in their children's education, schools are increasingly taking on the responsibility of educating children's values. This shift has weakened the influence of parents, and their voices are often ignored when facing educational policies. The authors believe that parents need to actively participate and remain vigilant to protect their children's educational rights. This not only concerns the future of individual families but also reflects the health and development of the entire public education system. Therefore, in the face of the challenges of the educational system, parents should actively seek effective ways to participate, rather than merely complaining, in order to truly bring about change in their children's education. In this chapter, the authors delve into the current state of the American education system, pointing out that the challenges it faces are not merely issues of resource allocation. Although the U.S. spends over $700 billion on education, the quality of education and the control of ideology do not necessarily reflect the value of this investment. Instead, there is a single-mindedness in ideology. As the authors state, "We honor the effort and salute the cause, but ultimately we bury them." This phenomenon renders traditional methods of struggle, such as protest or lobbying, increasingly ineffective. The education system is seen as a mechanism for upholding Republican ideals and equal opportunities, but in reality, it has become a tool dominated by left-wing ideology, undermining the diversity of education. The authors emphasize that in the face of this behemoth, participating in educational governance, becoming a school board member, or a local legislator is a more strategic choice. In American classrooms, teachers' unions still control classrooms, and curricula are polluted, resulting in the homogenization of educational content. As the authors mention, in American classrooms, teachers' unions still control classrooms, and curricula are still polluted. Many people have not questioned the narrative of school, even feeling that questioning is too unimportant, or institutionally too important to question. However, these public schools are actually among the world's largest state monopolies, surpassing many countries' education systems, forming a power structure that is difficult to break. Therefore, the core call of the chapter is to re-examine the structure and dynamics of the education system, realizing that only through active participation in politics and educational governance can the status quo be effectively changed and the monopoly of ideology be broken. As the authors state, under-equipped frontal assaults, especially those conducted case by case, are worse than failing. They actually empower these entrenched systems. In this context, only through collective action and strategic thinking can genuine educational reform be driven. In a small restaurant in Keswick, North Carolina, the author's interaction with ordinary Americans gave him a deeper understanding of the changes in current society. He found that despite the challenges of the pandemic, racial issues, and political turmoil, ordinary people still uphold traditional values. He notes, "Every time I sat down with a teacher, a construction worker, a small business owner, or a restaurant server, they weren't talking about Ivy League or the esoteric topics debated on MSNBC, they were talking about the Bible, faith, family, hard work, supporting the police, defending the national anthem, and constitutional amendments." This phenomenon reflects a counterintuitive reality. Ordinary Americans' understanding of politics and society is not limited to the esoteric topics advocated by left-wing media. On the contrary, they have a deep understanding of and concern for fundamental principles such as constitutional amendments. The author further criticizes the gap between the elite left-wing media and the general public, emphasizing that the left's criticisms are so intense because the gap is so vast between the elite left-wing media and hardworking, God-fearing, tax-paying American citizens. This phenomenon not only reveals the cultural deficit in society but also shows a misunderstanding of history and tradition. The prevalent ideas of social justice, political correctness, and diversity in modern society are often seen as new religions, contradicting American traditional values, leading to misinterpretations of culture. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the author felt a collapse within the nation, but as his thinking deepened, he realized that we're missing something. This missing element is the faith, family, and traditional values cherished by ordinary people. Despite numerous challenges, ordinary people still show hope for the future. Through this experience, the author firmly believes that the voices and faith of ordinary people are still important pillars of American culture, and their values will continue to lead society toward a brighter future. In exploring how the left has gained a dominant position in American society, this chapter reveals a counterintuitive truth. Many believe that economic control is most important, but in reality, cultural control is more crucial. As the book mentions, America's progressives know that social control is far more powerful than economic control. The left, by concentrating its power on controlling education, a key area, profoundly influences the future of the entire society. Many might believe that conservatives' advantages in economic freedom and military strength make them more influential, but this chapter emphasizes that the left's victory in the cultural realm is quiet yet extremely effective. In this process, the left does not need to control every field. As the text points out, it's not that the left needs to control every square inch of America, they focus on key terrain, and the result today is shocking. Through control of the education system, the left can cultivate generation after generation of young people who identify with their ideology, thereby forming a powerful cultural influence. Even more surprising is that although the left dominates the education field, they can cleverly deny their existence through the media, making the outside world's understanding of their influence unclear. These cultural Marxists are able to deflect any criticism, deny any accusation, defeat any opponent, because we're fighting on terrain they completely control. Therefore, this chapter not only reveals how the left uses education as a tool to gradually establish its cultural hegemony but also warns readers that under this subtle influence, they must remain vigilant and resistant. This chapter delves into a key issue within the American education system: pedagogy, not just curriculum. During the COVID-19 pandemic, discussions surrounding critical race theory sparked strong reactions from leftists. As the authors point out in Cynical Theories, the left's preferred language is constantly shifting because they stem from a very specific worldview, one that even expresses itself in a unique way of speaking. This change not only reflects the evolution of ideology but also reveals the deep-seated influence of education. In reality, education is not merely the transmission of information and skills. Pedagogy plays a crucial role in shaping students' cultural views, a fact often overlooked. Interestingly, while leftists deny critical race theory, they actually subtly incorporate it into the classroom through pedagogy, a covert method that makes it difficult for parents and the public to detect. As the text mentions, the left mostly denies their unpopular theories, then, after exposure, they hide behind the words they created and defined, using these words to attack unsuspecting Americans. This strategy not only obscures the true purpose of education but also reflects a shift in the goals of modern education, from cultivating independent thinking citizens to cultivating future workers, a stark contrast to traditional educational ideals. Furthermore, the chapter emphasizes that the transformation of pedagogy is an important factor in the changes in American culture. Left-wing ideology is deeply rooted in students' minds through the education system, influencing their understanding of the nation, history, and their own identity. Ultimately, this subtle influence can lead to a fundamental change in a generation's understanding of their cultural roots, challenging our traditional views on the essence of education. In the American education system, the influence of teachers' unions has become increasingly prominent, and the changes during President Joe Biden's tenure are particularly noteworthy. On the day Biden took office, he disbanded the 1776 commission established by Trump, a move that marked his redefinition of the educational narrative. Biden's wife has been a longtime member of the teachers' union, and he received substantial donations from the union during his campaign, indicating the deep roots of teachers' unions in the field of education. As one commentator noted, education unions completely control our classrooms in America. Many might think the Department of Education was established to improve the quality of education, but in reality, its establishment is closely related to the influence of teachers' unions, reflecting the complex power dynamics behind educational policies. The chapter deeply analyzes how teachers' unions exert influence in the selection, training, and curriculum setting of teachers, emphasizing the close connection between these unions and the cultural left. Teachers' unions are seen as institutions that protect the rights of teachers, but many of their policies actually promote the spread of cultural Marxism. For example, the National Education Association (NEA) used Saul Alinsky's theories to train teachers, aiming to promote social change, which stands in stark contrast to its outward image of upholding teachers' rights. In addition, the chapter reveals the reciprocal relationship between the Democratic Party and teachers' unions, challenging the traditional view that the Democratic Party is a positive advocate for educational reform. In fact, as the chapter states, there is no Department of Education without the NEA. This relationship not only influences educational policies but also changes the dynamics of elections politically. The unions wield electoral power, and politicians open doors for them. In short, the profound influence of teachers' unions in the American education system and their intertwining with politics challenge our traditional understanding of the relationship between education and politics. Through an analysis of their control, we can gain a deeper understanding of the power structures and intertwined interests within the education system. In discussing the implementation of Common Core education standards and their impact on the American education system, we can't help but notice the complexity and potential risks of this policy. As California teacher Rebecca Friedrichs stated, when Common Core came into our schools, we teachers were told, "You have to teach Common Core." We asked, "What is it?" They said, "We don't know, it's not written yet." This phenomenon not only reflects the chaos and lack of transparency in educational policies but also represents a significant weakening of traditional educational content. Many believe that education should impart classical knowledge and moral values, but Common Core has removed these classics, replacing them with ideological curricula, clearly contradicting the general public's understanding. Even more surprising is that teachers' unions, which should protect teachers' interests, have actually cooperated with left-wing ideological groups to promote ideological education. As mentioned in the chapter, Common Core is like everything these subversive unions do. It's complicated, confusing, convoluted, and intentionally created to wreck a great education system. Furthermore, society generally believes that education is neutral, but in reality, education has been deeply infiltrated by ideology, and the role of teachers has been redefined as a role of solving social problems, rather than simply imparting knowledge. All this shows that Common Core has not only caused tremendous changes in educational content but has also had a profound impact on students' historical views and values, promoting the ideas advocated by Howard Zinn, becoming an extreme left-wing project. In short, this chapter profoundly reveals how the Common Core education standards, by weakening traditional educational content and promoting ideological education, have changed American students' learning experiences and cognitive frameworks. In the current education system, deeper issues are gradually emerging, particularly the infiltration of cultural Marxism and the influence of the left. As the authors say, the struggle feels like parents with pellet guns against teachers' unions in machine gun nests, reflecting not only the power imbalance between parents and the education system but also revealing that education is not simply the transmission of knowledge but an ideological battle. Many people often believe that education is neutral, but in reality, educational content and methods are deeply influenced by politics and culture. The left, through unions, teacher colleges, and textbooks, has actually stolen kids' minds, knowing what must be removed to make it happen. This perspective challenges widely held common sense and prompts us to re-examine the true purpose of education. More importantly, the key to solving educational problems does not lie in simply opposing the existing system but in rediscovering and rebuilding the core values of Western civilization. The authors mention that many young families are gradually realizing this. They have put down their pellet guns and are seeking deeper educational philosophies and values to address the current educational crisis. This radical choice is a choice that could save our nation, reflecting not only a profound reflection on educational content but also a re-examination of the future direction of education. Through this transformation, parents hope to provide their children with a healthier intellectual environment, resisting potential ideological erosion. Therefore, it is particularly important to call on people to pay attention to the fundamental problems of education and seek more powerful solutions. Review **. In today's society, the transformation of the education system and the infiltration of ideology have become focal points of public concern. Particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, the radicalization of educational content has sparked widespread discussion. In the chapter Our COVID-19 Moment, Pete Hegseth, through a profound analysis of the American education system, reveals the roots of progressive educational philosophy and its far-reaching influence on contemporary education. This argument not only challenges people's understanding of educational traditions but also prompts readers to reflect on the true purpose of education and the educational content we have received. Hegseth points out that the philosophy of progressive education has permeated all aspects of the education system, including curriculum design, teacher hiring practices, and the educational content itself. These seemingly subtle changes are actually the result of conscious design, not natural evolution. This perspective has important implications for educational reform in today's society. Many people believe that educational reform can be achieved through superficial adjustments, but Hegseth warns that unless the fundamental ideological issues are addressed, any reform will only be a temporary fix. During the pandemic, parents gained insight into the school's teaching content for the first time, discovering the radical ideas permeating education, such as the concepts of white privilege and systemic racism. This phenomenon, known as the COVID-19 effect, marks the awakening of parents' awareness of educational content. This awakening is not only a questioning of educational content but also a reflection on the education system itself. Hegseth mentions that many parents and educators failed to realize that the radical ideas lurking within the education system were deeper and more widespread than they imagined. This discovery reminds us that as parents and members of society, we must remain vigilant about educational content and actively participate in discussions about educational reform. Hegseth also emphasizes the importance of the K-12 education stage, considering it the key battleground for shaping thoughts and values. Many parents underestimate the importance of education in shaping children's thoughts and values, believing that university education is the main battleground for ideological awareness. However, the influence of K-12 education is far more profound. The educational content children encounter at this stage will directly affect their future thinking and values. In analyzing the phenomenon of cultural brainwashing, Hegseth points out that progressive ideas exist not only in school education but also permeate various aspects, including books, television, and social media. In bookstores in conservative communities, progressive and agenda-driven children's books occupy prominent positions, and traditional patriotic, Christian, or conservative-themed books are almost impossible to find. This phenomenon reflects the homogenization of culture and the marginalization of traditional values. Parents need to pay more attention to the cultural content their children are exposed to in order to protect their intellectual independence. Furthermore, Hegseth explores the relationship between religion, culture, and politics, emphasizing the fundamental role of religion in shaping culture and politics. The current cultural crisis stems from the gradual decline of the Christian faith. Empty church seats and secularized classrooms cultivate an anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Christian culture. The author calls on people to re-examine the importance of faith in modern society and to realize the potential consequences of the cultural crisis. When faced with the challenges of the education system, Hegseth points out that mere complaints and protests are insufficient to bring about substantive change. Many parents feel powerless when facing educational policies, and despite expressing anger and protest at school board meetings, the changes in educational content remain insignificant. This phenomenon reminds us that parents need to actively participate in educational governance, such as becoming school board members or local legislators, to change existing educational policies. Hegseth emphasizes that the transformation of the education system requires more strategic approaches, not just superficial struggles. He likens the current educational struggle to parents using pellet guns against teachers' unions and machine gun nests, highlighting the left's comprehensive control over the education field. This metaphor vividly depicts the powerlessness of parents when facing a powerful education system, while also encouraging them to seek deeper educational philosophies and values. In conclusion, Hegseth's argument reveals the deep-seated problems in the American education system, emphasizing the infiltration of ideology in education and the important roles of parents and members of society in educational reform. Faced with the growing left-wing ideology and the power structures within the education system, only through active participation and vigilance can the status quo be effectively changed and the monopoly of ideology be broken. For today's society, this argument not only has theoretical depth but also provides practical guidance.